We take another look at the public and public theology. Max Stackhouse died in 2017. Stackhouse was a prolific and highly influential American theologian, widely recognized for his contributions to the emerging field of public theology. He was described as a genuinely interdisciplinary and global thinker, and a public theologian par excellence. He was a key figure in Christian social ethics over the last half-century. An important book and an edited edition of his writings, Shaping Public Theology, was published in 2014. It is a selection of his best thinking on public theology and social ethics. There have been and are other key theologians who have written and taught public theology. The late Duncan Forrester from Edinburgh and the very much alive Miroslav Volf, a Croatian public theologian. The Himes brothers from the USA and Chris Marshall from New Zealand. A notable Asian public theologian is D. Preman Niles from Sri Lanka, who in the context of doing public theology in pluralist multi-faith Asia has an intriguing book entitled, Is God Christian? That is a pertinent question to which we will return in session 5, when we look at engaging with religiously plural and secular worlds. Can we really talk about God as Christian, or is that to sectarianize God? Stackhouse speaks about theology's publics. He names 4. 1, the authentic religious public. This is the faith community which claims to have a vision of the sacred and a commitment to what is holy or good, and to faithful living. But how are the members of the faith community formed and nurtured in a faith that is public and weighted with social meaning? What can, is, and should be preached and taught among those who belong to the community of faith and faithful living? Is there an awareness that worship and liturgy are redescribing and reimagining the world and shaping participants in a moral vision of human and eco-life? Are Christian educational programs informing and forming the faithful for public engagement and equipping them theologically and ethically for faithful action in the public square? 2, the political public. This public consists of those who are in authority, elected public representatives who have responsibility to legislate and govern for the common good of all citizens. Though our politics are party politics, and we elect party politicians, legislative responsibility and the duty of governance is for all the people of society with no exclusions or discrimination. That is bottom line political democracy. Stackhouse asks, what can provide those in authority with a vision of and motivation for just institutions in society so that the common life can flourish? This is Stackhouse's question. And he goes on to put down an important marker. He says public theology errs if it tries to usurp the role of government or politics, but it claims the ability to provide the moral and spiritual fibre that would allow just and responsive politics to function. 3, the academic public. A future development of this public theology initiative will be at 3 levels. There is no hierarchical arrangement, but the 3 levels are indivisible, with each needing the other. The 3 levels are academic, church, and community. Public theology needs to operate at all 3 levels, with each level feeding into the others. The academic public is necessary, not only in the development and delivery of academic courses for lay clergy and priests. The academic public is necessary for the rigorous, critical development, testing and analysis of theology and ethics for public dialogue and action. Academic research will feed into church and community, public theology, and church and community will be essential arenas of field research. The academic public will also need to be interdisciplinary. Interaction with other areas of the academic public will be necessary to shape and inform public theology. There are the crucial insights of peace studies, gender studies, feminist studies, environmental studies, education, economic and business studies, human rights, computer studies, and political science and history. Public theology requires a comprehensive academic public. 4, the economic public. There is a sense in which everything is economics. Everything is driven by economics. This introductory course on public theology needed money to be delivered and pursued. And yet, public theology will also say that there is more to life than economics, GNP, or money. The next line of that ABBA song goes on to say, it's a rich man's world. It looks like that. But that is a world of inequality, not only of wealth, but of power, a world of injustice and poverty, which the moral vision of public theology critiques and questions and offers an alternative ethical vision. Stackhouse puts the question, what allows human life to flourish, to be relieved of drudgery and to contribute to material well-being by encouraging creativity in production and distribution? I want to add a 5th public to Stackhouse's 4, and it is very much his anyway because he has written extensively on it in relation to public theology. That is a global public. Globalization has been described as the compression of the world. It is not necessarily new, but how we experience it in the 21st century is significantly different. Globalization is a multidimensional process. It is simultaneously cultural, economic, and political. It is not going to lead to one world governance nor to global integration politically. There are major economic problems with globalization, described better as economistic, not simply economic conceptions, which reduce globalization to economic material aspects of life. Globalization is more than the McDonaldization, sameness, standardization of the world. There are aspects of globalization that threaten indigenous cultures on the planet. Public theology with applied social ethics has critical things to say about negative globalization. It has also things to say about difference within sameness, as well as opposition and resistance to the commoditization of culture and religion. The reality of the global public pushes public theology towards greater and more inclusive horizons of thought, ethics, and action. There are ethics for interrelationships and interdependence, neighborliness, social and global solidarity, compassion and justice in relationships and institutions and structures. Public theology, engaging with the global public, advocates for ethical globalization. God so loved the world really is a global affirmation of faith requiring a vision of the sacred and a moral vision of the whole community of life, human and bio-flourishing. In this context, is God Christian? There are more publics in public theology. Doing public theology is the challenge of the 21st century. We are to engage with 21st century public issues and questions with the challenging theological and ethical questions of our time. The world around us is changing, and to develop an active theology for the 21st century is to take seriously faith and ethics as applied to public questions of politics, economics, environment, globalization, technology, poverty, war, violence, common good, and planetary flourishing. This is the public in public theology. Public theology is applied social ethics. and we do have a 21st century theological ethical agenda. Finally, the Ethical and Shared Remembering Programme, 1912 to 1922, in which large numbers have participated, has now moved into a second phase. The events of 1918-1922 are not only being explored historically, there is a thematic approach. Big themes emerge from those years 1918 to 1922 in Ireland, and they provide a fresh and more future-orientated approach to and engagement with the past. Under the overall theme of engaging the root causes of past violence in Ireland, Education for Liberation, there are 8 identified themes. These are historical, patriarchic, religious, political, militaristic, cultural, and 2 themes that begin to remember the future, the common good, and building democracy. The religious theme has already been explored extensively through a book which I wrote for countrywide seminars on the 16th century Reformations, plural, and the legacy for Ireland. Patriarchy has been developed as an in-depth course by Dr. Cathy Higgins and has been rolled out in the Junction Dairy, Londonderry, with more courses to follow and a forthcoming book by Dr. Higgins. The 8 themes are not just secular, but also 8 publics, a public theology agenda. The themes will be explored and are being explored during this year. For people of faith, these themes are the context in which we do public theology and ethics. A question for group discussion. Which of the publics require priority attention by people of faith? And how do we deal with them in the faith community? Identify your top 3.